In a viral clip from the Joe Rogan Experience, Mark Zuckerberg admitted that Facebook deliberately suppressed stories about Hunter Biden's laptop in 2020. Now, what Zuckerberg said, and it's very obvious he's trying to paint this with a soft brush, is that, well, the FBI came to us and gave us a general warning about Russian disinformation, so naturally, we suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. Yeah, I don't buy it for a second. I mean, even on the surface, what Mark Zuckerberg described is the U.S. government interfering in elections, the DOJ. It is the FBI directing Facebook to engage in censorship. You don't get to go as the government with the First Amendment. You can't go to a major corporation publication platform and say, "Oh, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest?" Wink, wink. Yeah, that is a violation of our First Amendment rights. Anyone who posted that story and had it deranked was being suppressed by the government, who gave a warning to Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg admitted they did it. The story about the FBI's election meddling doesn't stop there, though. We have this story from timcast.com. 2 plead guilty and plan to sell Ashley Biden's diary. The diary was turned over to law enforcement by Project Veritas. Now, of course, I read the story. I don't know exactly what is true, but these two individuals, because it's politics, right? But these two individuals apparently took one individual took the diary, and then they conspired to sell it. It is being reported they sold it to Project Veritas. Veritas says they've done nothing wrong. Some people came to them and said, "Hey, we have this diary." But it does sound like this lady stole it. It really does. We'll see. But here's the point. Okay. Maybe they did something wrong, and that's fine if the FBI wants to go after them, but not when we're learning that FBI officials told agents not to investigate the Hunter Biden laptop ahead of the 2020 election. We are about a month and a half away. Okay, like what? 2 months. Two and a half months, sorry, from the midterms. This is not quite an October surprise, but learning now that the FBI said, "Oh, we can't sway the election, so we're going to hold off on the criminal activity of the Hunter Biden laptop." Then they go in and raid Donald Trump's home for documents right before an election. They're lying. This is overt corruption. They're arresting these people, these two individuals who pleaded guilty. We have the FBI going after them, raiding Project Veritas, and now we get guilty pleas right before an election, besmirching Project Veritas. Interesting. And now we're learning from Zuckerberg that they went and warned them. I'm going to tell you this, my friends. If the FBI gave explicit instructions to the top brass, explicit instructions not to investigate the laptop, then they go to Facebook and say, "Oh, won't someone rid me of this meddlesome priest?" And then Mark Zuckerberg suppresses the story. You ain't convincing me. The FBI, in my opinion, based on everything we've seen, you would have to be a conspiracy theorist to believe it was a coincidence that the FBI went to Facebook and then Facebook suppressed the laptop story at the exact same time that the FBI was telling its agents not to investigate. Now that is crazy. And it's scary. Because to what degree is the FBI actually just engaged in political manipulation and control as some kind of secret police force, some kind of Gestapo or Stasi? Now that's legitimately scary. We're going to read this story, but my friends, I have a tremendous announcement. In the description below, you will see a link if you really want to support the work we're doing in building culture and trying to branch out the influence that we have into other areas. Buy our new single, Only Ever Wanted. It's up at Timcast Records on YouTube. Look at that. That's me, and I'm wearing my shirt and my beanie and all that. What I would like to accomplish, in the description below, click the link to Apple Music, buy the song, 69 cents, and I'll tell you why. One of the things that I think is really, really important for the work we're doing is building normal culture, not political culture. There's been a tremendous response to this song. Obviously, from fans of the show, they're buying it. But also, we have people on the left incessantly attacking the song, saying it's terrible and we shouldn't do it, and that I should be ashamed of myself and things like that. And I'll tell you why. This is one of the most difficult things for the cult to deal with. It's not political content. It is just pop music. And I think the end is kind of emo. I don't know. We're kids of the 2000s and the 90s. So, of course, that is reflected in our song, in the music we were making. This is just the first step. This song is not political. The idea is to make things that regular people will like and listen to so we can build cultural influence. Then when we report the news, they get access to true and real information. I mean, that's not the only reason we do it. Obviously, I've been playing music longer than I've been doing anything since I was like 7 years old. So I'm very much always making music. But the goal with everything we're doing, the reason why we started Pop Culture Crisis, the reason why we started Chicken City and Cast Castle, they're not political shows. Because I know you're not going to make a song called F. Joe Biden. Go to a regular person and say, this is the music you should be sharing with all your friends. They're going to be like, dude, this is like overtly political. But already now, I'm seeing these cultists saying things like, this song might actually generate mass appeal of among people outside of, Tim Cast's political space or fan base. That's the goal. How do we advertise and create things that regular people will want to be involved in? This is what we're trying to do. So in the description below, please consider buying this song for 69 cents on Apple Music or just listening to it and streaming it. But buying it really is like the most powerful thing. According to like all the charts, one purchase of a song is 150 times more impactful than listening to the song one time. So if you want to support our work, I'm going to be blasting this song endlessly for the next week because the first week is the most important to try and get this song charting. The whole goal of what we're trying to do with all this cultural stuff is to invade the cultural spaces of the establishment and assert ourselves above and beyond them. We want regular people to feel like it's safe to criticize their psychosis, to call out the electioneering of the FBI and things like that without being canceled. In order to do that, there's got to be shows, there's got to be movies, there's got to be businesses, there's got to be a parallel economy. This is what we're doing. The Daily Wire's got movies, we are launching music. I know the first song is mine, but we're going to be signing other artists, so please consider supporting us. Let's read the news. Description below, click the link, or go to timcastrecords.com. The Daily Mail says, furious Republicans demand Mark Zuckerberg testify before Congress after his astonishing admission that Facebook willfully censored Hunter Biden's laptop revelations for 10 days in the run-up to the election after FBI's Russian disinformation warning. Zuckerberg has sparked outrage with his bombshell revelation that Facebook deliberately used an algorithm to suppress stories about Hunter Biden's laptop in 2020 before the November election after an intervention by the FBI. Republican politicians and voters have accused the FBI and Facebook of censorship, adding further questions about whether Americans should have been aware of the laptop before going to the polls and the impartiality of the bureau head Chris Wray, who ordered the raid on Mar-a-Lago this month. And I'll also mention with the Ashley Biden diary. Came out right before the election. No news outlet reported on what was in that diary, and it is disgusting what is in that diary. I feel bad for Ashley Biden. From the sound of the story, it does seem like people were doing dirty garbage, and it is wrong, in my opinion. So it's tough. The challenging thing is, if the information comes out and it's relevant to an election, I understand October surprises are dirty. I understand what people were doing behind the scenes is dirty. But the fact that the media did not pick up on these stories is election interference. You do not get to decide not to do your job this one time because of election interference. No. The FBI claiming, we didn't want to interfere in an election, so we didn't investigate the laptop, or telling Facebook, all of this is electioneering. You do your job no matter what. Yes, people may try to manipulate you, but it is not your place to say, you know what, we're not going to do our job this time, because that's taking a side. If the normal course of action for you as a journalist or a federal agent is we investigate when we get the information, then it doesn't matter what time of year it is, you investigate when you get the information. Deviating from your job is giving a benefit to one side. And yes, people may time this perfectly. The October surprise, what are you going to do about it? Deciding not to do your job because an election was happening is interference. It is. You are deviating from the normal course of actions for a political benefit. GOP House Leader Kevin McCarthy added, the FBI colluded with big tech to silence news stories weeks before the 2020 election in an attempt to control your access to information. They say Rep. and Andrew Clyde of Georgia said this isn't just insane. It's election interference. The Oversight Committee must immediately invite Mark Zuckerberg to testify under oath about the FBI's attempts to circumvent the First Amendment. The American people deserve answers and accountability. Now, I know I was talking about the Hunter Biden laptop story, but in this story, they didn't just do nothing. They went to Facebook and said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I think I'd be willing to bet that the FBI went to Zuckerberg and said, do not let this story percolate. And Mark Zuckerberg is just being delicate. I wish, look, Joe Rogan is a national treasure because he's able to have these conversations, get these people in the hot seat and have them admit this. This is incredible. Whether Joe wants to admit it or not, this is like some of the most important journalism in our generation, of our generation. What I'd like to see now is follow-up. Zuckerberg being grilled and asked more intense questions. But this, man, Joe, hitting it out of the ballpark. It's amazing that a stand-up comic and MMA commentator and everything that Joe is as an entertainer is also, whether he wants to accept it or not, the most consequential journalist of our generation. I genuinely mean that. Now, Joe may not be seeking out to do journalism, but when you get Mark Zuckerberg in that seat and you say, tell me what happened, and then Zuckerberg says the FBI came to us, gave us a warning about misinformation, so we decided to suppress this story. Earth-shattering. Just absolutely incredible. They say, Zuckerberg said Facebook enacted a policy of decreased distribution to deliberately push down the story on people's news feeds to limit its reach, while Twitter went even further and banned the story from its platform. The billionaire said, I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false. The distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could share it. You could still consume it. I think that anybody who tried to share this story and was suppressed by Facebook or Twitter, I would assume they have a First Amendment lawsuit against the U.S. government. If this is happening to Facebook, do you think they didn't go to Twitter? I'd be willing to bet they went directly to Twitter. They say the huge cache of files, emails, and photos was seen by many as a smoking gun that could have turned the tide in the election. But social media bosses at Facebook and Twitter minimized the story for unfounded fears it could be Russian misinformation. Daily Mail independently verified the laptop with a forensic analysis by top cyber experts and has been regularly publishing revelations ever since, while many other news outlets refuse to touch the story. But now Zuckerberg has openly admitted how he tried to limit the electorate from accessing the stories in a terrifying insight into how easily democracy can be undermined by tech firms. It's not your place, Mark. It's not. If someone from Russia calls on the phone, people in America, and says, I want to tell you that Hunter Biden has leapt up. Are you going to be, as AT&T, going to be like, oh, Russians are calling Americans, better shut it down? No. It's crazy. If a Russian person wanted to buy a billboard, they're not going to ban that either. Well, they might, depending on what the billboard said. But in the United States, everyone has a First Amendment right to speak. Ian brought up an interesting point last night on IRL. Do people outside of the U.S. have First Amendment protections when they're posting on a platform hosted in the U.S.? It's a good point. I would say for distribution in the U.S., these big tech companies should not be engaged in this practice. Here's what they should be engaged in. Verification of users, like getting rid of spam and bot accounts. That's about it. I suppose the challenges they're going to say is like, well, it could be a real Russian person posting misinformation. And my response is, and this has always been the case. There's leaflets, there's propaganda. It happens all of the time. This is nonsense. This was a real story from the New York Post, and they claimed it came from Russia. Okay. If it was a Russian guy who was from Pravda.ru or whatever. Is it RU or no? What is the Russian TLD? I think it's Soviet. It's like SV or something. I don't know. Whatever. No, it might be RU these days. I don't know. Whatever. It's a top level domain like .com, but countries, like dailymail.co.uk. If that happened, you might have an argument. It's like, this is from Pravda.sv. Like, we don't believe it's real. But this was the New York Post, one of the oldest publications in this country. And they were accused of spreading Russian misinformation, but it was an American source reporting. This is insane. It's absolutely insane. I want to lightly touch on this story because now they're going after Project Veritas, and I think they're going after him because Project Veritas is effective. 2 plead guilty and plan to sell Ashley Biden's diary. The diary was turned over to law enforcement by Project Veritas. Veritas did the right thing. They didn't publish the content. Someone else did. Apparently, it went to the national file. James O'Keefe got pissed at somebody. Somehow it did. Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander pleaded guilty to conspiracy to transport stolen property across state lines. Both could be sentenced up to 5 years in prison. Here's what happened. Harris, who lives in Palm Beach, reportedly found the diary while staying in the room at the home of a friend of Ashley Biden in Delray Beach in September 2020. The first daughter had moved out of the home in spring of 2020 and had stored several items in the room in addition to the diary. Harris then reached out to Kurlander, who offered to help her sell the diary for a ton of money. Now, I think what Veritas is saying is that it was when they discovered that it may have been stolen, they immediately brought it to law enforcement. FBI then raided them. I think they're trying to use this to basically sting Veritas. They say the DOJ contends Veritas ultimately paid Harris and Kurlander each $20,000. Both had to forfeit that amount under the terms of their plea agreements. James O'Keefe, the founder of Veritas, has said his organization's conduct regarding the diary was ethical and appropriate. Quote, like any reporter, we regularly deal with the receipt of source information and take steps to verify its authenticity, legality, and newsworthiness. Our efforts were the stuff of responsible ethical journalism, and we are in no doubt that Project Veritas has acted properly at each and every step, he said in a statement per the New York Post. A journalist's lawful receipt of material later alleged to be stolen is routine, commonplace, and protected by the First Amendment. Here's what I think. I think these people called up Veritas and said, we found this. And they said, okay, can you prove it's real? They're now trying to claim that these operatives at Veritas were telling these people to go and steal more things. I don't buy it. This is how they go after WikiLeaks. They were like, oh, but the organization instructed them to commit a crime. That's how they get Espionage Act weird nonsense. Well, that was when they were going for federal government stuff. With this, they're going to try and claim that Veritas was doing something illegal. I don't buy it. What I do think is these two people probably did. However, they came across the diary. There's questions to be asked. Dude, if somebody has a bag and some belongings in a closet at a house, they didn't abandon it. You can't just take it. It's like if it was found discarded in a garbage, okay, well, there you go. If you're at someone's house and it's there and you go, well, they abandoned it. No, dude. I have personal belongings at friend's house. I just need to go pick them up. They're there because I don't expect them to be stolen. But anyway, I digress. I think this shows the duplicitousness of the FBI, that right before the election, you have this story going after Veritas, going after the Biden diary, yet they wouldn't go after the Hunter Biden laptop. No. Every action they've taken has been to protect the Bidens. When the laptop comes out, legitimately, because that was abandoned, oh no, tell everybody not to share it. Go to Mark Zuckerberg and say, you better watch out for this Russian disinformation. Then with the Ashley Biden diary, oh, they go and arrest the people who took it and sold it to Veritas, allegedly. And they raid Project Veritas, a news organization. I'll remind all of you that Veritas, well, it's my understanding they've never lost a defamation lawsuit. You think that James O'Keefe would be so dumb? No. When they came to Veritas, I'm sure he was like, lawyers, you deal with it. And it went all through their lawyers. And I'm willing to bet that Veritas did everything so far above board that the FBI is going to come up empty-handed. But we'll see. Because when the FBI is playing dirty games like this is truly scary stuff. Raiding the home of a former president right before a midterm election. Yeah, I'm sorry. No one is going to believe them. If they're saying, we didn't want to interfere in an election, so we didn't investigate. But right before an election, we investigated Trump. Lies. This is dirty stuff, man. And it goes to the top. Chris Wray. And people say, well, Trump appointed him. Yeah, well, Trump did a lot of bad things. This is scary day. These are scary days, man. You look at this stuff and, I often mention these are the kinds of things where in the past, people would flee countries over it. The FBI, there was a poll that said that there was an element of the FBI. Do you think the FBI is acting like Joe Biden's personal Gestapo? And it was like 53% said yes. And it was like 80-something% Republicans, but across moderates and Republicans, people are like, yeah, dude, this is crazy. They shouldn't be doing this. The evidence is clear now. They are working to protect the Biden family. The FBI should not be doing that, man. Now, look, I'm fairly optimistic. If we were losing, if, freedom, liberty, American values were losing, this wouldn't be necessary. They'd sit back and be like, we don't got to do anything. So I'll tell you this, my friends. Liz Cheney loses. Carrie Lake wins. Joe Kent wins. More and more, we are seeing victories. This is it. This is their desperation. They know that come the midterms, the Republicans are going to win, but not just any Republicans. With people like Joe Kent, with people like Carrie Lake, there are going to be major moves targeting the establishment malfeasance, and they know it, and they're scared. And that's why they raided Donald Trump's home. They're desperate. I think we're winning, yo. So I'll wrap it up with this. The most important thing is not politics, it's culture. I say it all the time. There are laws on the books we do not follow. Everybody speeds, for instance. You know it. And like 10 to 15 over, too, depending on where you live. You're on the highway. Everyone's going 10 miles over the limit. Well, that's illegal. I strongly recommend against speeding, mind you. But it's like you go on the highway and everyone's doing it. And it's actually more dangerous not to go with the flow of traffic. You see, culture matters more. There are many old laws that are on the books that aren't enforced anymore. If our culture deems something to be, then it will be. If we say in the 1950s that racial segregation is wrong and codify a law saying you can't do this, but at the same time allow for sex segregation. You see, there's a hole in that law. The law said you couldn't discriminate on the basis of, race, sex, national origin, religion, but then we only desegregated based on race, not any other thing. That's interesting, isn't it? Right now, there's a big move to end sex segregation because culture, not law, and they're using the law with the culture. So here's what I see as being the most important thing. This is why timcast.com, the work we're doing, has not been overtly political, and every project we're launching is outside of politics. We need to inspire young people. We need to make things that make young people say, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Now, there's a lot of people doing politics. There's a lot of great political music. Tom MacDonald has some of the best songs ever written. No joke. And there's been a lot of top iTunes charting music. There have been a lot of shows and movies made. But I got to tell you, man, who's doing it right? The Daily Wire. They're making content that is not political because they get it. They understand. You need to create a space for regular people who are like, I don't know about politics, man, but that show is really good. You need to take the power away from not just the Hulus, the Disneys, the Netflixes, but the major record labels. That's the move we're making right now. timcastrecords.com, link in the description below. We really need your support on this one. And, look, I'll be completely honest. It's like, for me, just something I really want to do. You know what I mean? But I genuinely mean it when I am saying we have to win that culture war front. So we got a lot more work coming in the future. Thanks for all the support you've given us so far. Thanks for watching. Next segment will be at 1 p.m., and I'll see you all then.